right. Good Friday afternoon, everybody out there in NOFA Nation. Our Friday of week 3 of the virtual summer conference, second to last day. We have this block of sessions. We have another block tomorrow afternoon, and then we have our keynote tomorrow night. So thank you so much for joining us. You have joined From Barn Process to USDA Plant, Issues with On-Farm Processing with Bruce Hennessey. Real quickly, a couple things to go over before we get started. My name is Paul Bertler. I'm a NOFA Massachusetts board member and volunteer, and I'll be your host this evening. We have a number of sponsors who help make our conference possible. We couldn't do this without their support, so I encourage you to check them out and purchase from them when you can. And I'd like to thank you, our viewers out there, for tuning in and making this summer conference a successful one, even in our virtual format. I encourage you, if you're not a member out there, to become a member of your NOFA chapter. We definitely rely on membership to help keep the NOFAs strong and healthy and support our education and advocacy work. We are presenting, attending, and hosting this workshop from land that was managed and inhabited before European colonization. Please take a moment to find your location on the map and honor those whose land you now occupy. For those of you joining from outside New England, this map can be found at native-land.ca and covers many places around the globe, so I encourage you to check it out. And now my distinguished guests, I'm going to introduce Bruce. Bruce is joining us. He has his phone, his screen on, so he'll be sharing a presentation, but he's also joining us on the phone for his audio. So we aren't going to have Bruce's face on the call for bandwidth reasons, but we'll have his voice in his presentation. This is Bruce's first summer conference. He was looking forward to joining us in person, but unfortunately that's not happening. But he was able to make the time and adapt his format to the virtual world. So thanks for joining us from Vermont, Bruce, and we're excited to have you and look forward to hearing what you have to say. So with that, please take it away.
Thanks very much, Paul. I'm excited to do this, and hello to the participants out there. And maybe it's just one. Is it just Laura? It looks like it is. And that's fine. I'm happy to have to get my feet wet with a smaller audience anyway. So I'll just get going. And Laura, I don't mind being interrupted. If you have a question, just ask it before you forget it, or write it down and ask it later, or put it up on the chat, and I'm happy to answer any question that you have about this. So I just wanted to start by saying that Maple Wind Farm is a diversified pasture-based livestock farm. Our pastures are certified organic, and we run a certified organic USDA poultry processing unit on our farm as well. We've been processing poultry and other animals on our farm for the last 21 years, though we are only now currently processing poultry under USDA inspection. And that's kind of where we've ended up over an evolution of 21 years in farming. So we'll get started there, and I'll take it away. Let me know if you can't see this, but I am this is what we do on our farm currently. We do 100% grass-fed beef. We are non-GMO, pasture-raised pork, broilers, eggs, organic turkeys, and we do some vegetables as well.
Hey, Bruce.
Yeah,
have you hit share your screen yet?
Oh boy, let's see. I'm sorry. I didn't realize I had to hit that again, but here we are.
Perfect.
And I will go back up to, sorry about that.
Nope, you're no problem.
Are we there? Yes.
Yep, perfect.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay, fantastic. Sorry about that. All right, so again, pasture-based livestock farm up in Huntington, Richmond, and Bolton, Vermont. We have 3 different main properties, and we have a very small USDA inspected poultry processing facility, which is certified organic. All right, so here are some of the things. So for many years, we operated under the exemption, and in Vermont, you're allowed to do up to 1,000 birds of any species, chickens, turkeys, ducks, without inspection, and sell it off your farm as a whole animal without inspection. And we did that for, about 13 years. And then along about 2013, we saw some opportunities, and we decided to get into inspected poultry processing as a result. One of the things that we discovered, and just looking at this slide here, is that we were sitting in the middle. We were big enough. You know, you're sitting in the middle when you're big enough to need employees to really get everything done, but you really can't afford to pay them anything. And that's kind of where we were back in 2012, 2011, 2012. We also experienced a lot of things that kind of changed our minds about what we were doing. First of all, 1,000 chickens on pasture is a nice it's a nice hobby, it's a nice sideline, but it is not something that constitutes a real business in the sense of making enough profit or income to keep a family afloat. So we needed to make a decision, either to drop our chicken operation or to get big enough for it to start to support us a little bit. The other big thing that we found was that, at least up in Vermont here, we started to feel like we started to see a lot of new farmers, which is great, but many of them were doing the things that we did. And so it was hard to, after a while, it was very hard to differentiate ourselves from other folks. So that was another reason that we chose to start to become, to start with the idea of becoming an inspected facility and being able to do more birds. So in a lot of ways, the local food movement in our area has matured. There's lots of choices. There's lots of choices in the supermarket for local foods. There's lots of market outlets. And with that came downward price pressure. And at kind of at our size back in 2012, 2013, we were not able to lower our prices and remain profitable. So we needed to find a way out of that particular problem. And then the last piece was that there was a lot of opportunities. At the time, Vermont had a state-inspected mobile processing unit for birds. They traveled around to different farms, and we used them too to get our birds to market and to expand our access to markets. And this was something that was a big boon to farms that were doing pasture poultry or other kinds of poultry. And right in 2012, they actually went out of business. They were not making enough money, so they decided to stop. And that represented a loss of 30,000 chickens and turkeys to the Vermont local market. So we decided to fill that void. There really wasn't any other place that we could take it within reasonable driving distance. And the markets were opening up for us, particularly out of state. So for us, as a very small state, we found that we needed to be able to sell our our birds across state lines. And the only way to do that currently is if you have a USDA stamp on your product. So that's where it left us. Happy to talk about barn processing. We did that for a long time. I feel like we were already there. So this was our expansion. Maple Wind produced about 750 broilers and 200 turkeys back in 2012. And then, and we were under the exemption at that point. And then since then, we decided back in 2013 to buy a mobile process, not a mobile, excuse me, a plant in a box, which is a inspected plant that was built inside an 8 by 40 foot shipping container and delivered onto our site. And that was really the most economical way to get it get operating under inspection. So we started out as a state inspected facility just to get our feet wet with inspected poultry. And it was a very steep learning curve for us, but we were able to expand to 4,500 of our own chickens or broilers, 300 turkeys, and then we did a few birds for outside producers, so other farms, and we were allowed to do that, and that actually helped us pay for some of the costs of setting this up. And now you can see this expansion heading forward. That's up to 2016. Currently, we'll be doing 40,000 broilers and 1,200 turkeys out on pasture this year for 2020. So heading on to the next slide. So this was that market opportunity. This was the mobile unit that ended up going out of business. Here are some of the advantages and disadvantages to being inspected versus non-inspected. So for under inspection, we did have to build an inspectable facility. So it has to be washable walls, stainless steel fittings. We need to be able to sanitize everything. And things like wood are not considered sanitary because they're porous and can hold pathogens in the pores of the wood. So to do that, we also had to follow strict sanitary standard operating procedures and other standard operating procedures. We also needed to operate under a HACCP plan, which is a Hazard Analysis Critical Control Plan, as required by federal regulation. And we have two specific critical control points that I can talk about a little bit later if people have questions. But that's an important piece, and that was a big barrier to get into inspected poultry. We have to have an inspector present at all times during slaughter. We need to conduct microbiological testing to demonstrate the effectiveness of our process. So every week we take a rinse of a random whole chicken and send it into the lab to test for E. coli and salmonella, and we're required to do that. And we get the results back, and if we have higher counts than we'd like, that's actually something that informs our process and helps us demonstrate that we're actually effective in keeping the birds pathogen free. The biggest advantage to all this is that we can sell to outlets across the country. We can part and grind and make sausage and dry cure any of these products since they came out of an inspected plant. This is an important piece. We do a lot of sales outside of the state, and we do a lot of parting. So in Vermont, you can only sell a whole bird off the farm or at farmers market. And currently, so when you're operating under the exemption, you really can't part your birds, and you really can't do anything, other than to sell directly off your farm or at farmers markets. But with a USDA seal, you can sell across the country. You can sell over state lines. You can park. You can grind. You can make sausage. You can do a bunch of different things, and that's a major advantage there. So for us, financing was a big part of what we did. We did sell the development rights to our farm to the Vermont Land Trust, and that helped us build funds to afford buying the plant in a box. And we did our main kind of grocery store, natural food store in our area. So it's named City Market. Was very interested in supporting us in doing this. They gave us a no-interest loan, and the Vermont state supported us with a grant through their Working Lands Enterprise Fund. So we got creative with our funding, and that was a big part of what we did. I want to pause for a minute. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them, or if somebody is interested and I'm not hitting certain points, please let me know.
Think we're all good, Bruce.
Okay, great. Then I will continue. All right, we did have to get some permitting. One of the big things in Vermont is it's kind of a right to farm, and in Vermont, if you're processing more than 50%, if you're actually producing 50% or more of what you're processing within the plant, then you can operate under the accepted agricultural practices here. And that means that we didn't have to go through the major development review that people do when they're building housing developments, for instance. We did work with the Agency of Agriculture here in Vermont to develop a wastewater design. If you've done poultry processing, you know that it's a heavily water-intensive process, and so you need to figure out a way, if you're going to start to do more birds, to work with that wastewater. And the state helped us and paid for 80% of our system to make sure that it helped us preserve water quality in our affected watershed. So it was definitely working with governmental agencies to figure out how to permit and get that up and running. And since it's on-farm processing, which is a key piece here, since it's on-farm processing, we did not have to go through the major developmental review that many other commercial operations do. Okay, building versus buying. This was our barn at the site that we were going to put in a process. We looked at putting it in that building. Extremely expensive to bring it up to spec. And this was actually the building on the left there, the barn that we were doing our non-inspected chicken processing in. It's a barn that was built in the 1880s, beautiful old post and beam barn. And we processed down in the basement there, right down in this area, and actually it was a pretty good space, but it was not in any way, there was no possible way that we could make that sanitary, at least according to regulation by the USDA or the state of Vermont. And to bring it up to that level would have been much more expensive than buying the plant in the box, which is this space here. And this plant in the box cost at the time, and this came with all equipment, where it was built out in Missouri. It came to us on a truck. We had a crane lift it off and drop it on the ground. We had already stubbed up utilities to it. It just needed piers set as a foundation because it's a structural building. And in that case, we were able to get an operating inspectable poultry processing unit for around $100,000, which is extremely cheap. And this is a unit that is designed to do about 1,000 birds a day at optimal usage. And that's about what we're doing right now. These are for sale now. We've worked with Plant in a Box. This was the first Plant in a Box in the country. We worked with them after we received it to make some changes. They've made a lot of changes and improvements, and that is currently, you can look into that. It's currently available out there. I don't have any association with them other than we were the first, and I felt like they worked with us well to make any necessary changes from their initial design. One of the big changes that we made, if you look down carefully in this floor, that is the floor drain right there. That's a little 2-inch floor drain. That does not work. So that's one of the changes we made. We actually poured a concrete floor in here and put in some channel drains with 4-inch drains, and now they work great. This is the kill side area. This is the birds come in through the back door. They're hung in these cones for the killing process, and then we scald and pluck them here. This is it, a little bit better set up. There's our scalder and our plucker. Here's the channel drain I talked about before, and then we have a wall here separating our kill and clean side, and over on this side, this is where we do all our evisceration and get the birds ready for chilling. We use shackles. We use shackles to hang birds. We feel like this is a much cleaner and better food safe operation. When you hang them by shackles, they're not commingling with any liquid that might be coming off other birds onto a table, and that's a really important factor, and it allows you to have a very efficient floor. So as I said, we made some new floor. We put in a new floor with adequate drainage. We put in a wall separating clean and dirty sides, this new evisceration rail and trolley system. We improved some of the lighting from the inspector, and we put in hands-free rinse stations and sinks. So we can do 1 to 2 people kill with scald and pluck, about 125 birds an hour. We've been as fast as 200 birds an hour, but that hasn't been something that we've been able to maintain over time. So we're right now we're operating between 125 and 180 birds an hour, but it averages more like 125 to 140 right now. So on the clean side, we're 4 to 5 people. We hang, wash, take the head and feet off, and cut the oil gland off. We J-cut around the vent and eviscerate. That's pulling out all the internal organs. That needs to be presented. The inspector needs to see those internal organs. Once those are out, and we harvest the giblets, the liver, and the heart, we do a final wash, a quality control, and make sure everything has been pulled out. And then they go into chilled crates and they get rolled into our air chiller. And I'll talk a lot more about air chilling later on in the program. Our goal is to be done by noon. We're not currently meeting that. Right now we are done more like 2:30 or 3 in the afternoon, with plenty of time to clean up at the end of the day. And then we do parting and packaging the following day after our slaughter day. So right now we are slaughtering 2 days a week, Mondays and Thursdays. We do about 1,000 birds each of those days. And on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, we do all of our parting and packaging. All right, getting a little bit further into the HACCP. So again, HACCP is a hazard analysis critical control point. You're required to write this if you want to be inspected at the federal level. So the HACCP plan includes sanitary standard operating procedures, other standard operating procedures, for instance, on how to operate any equipment, the scalder, the plucker, any other machines that we have in there, and good management practices as well. The HACCP plan it's really like another language, but there are many models out there. It's really not that hard to write one. There are many kind of standard plans that you can adapt to your own situation. So you can start with kind of the bones of a HACCP plan and then put it together from there. One of the big things about HACCP plans is that whatever critical control that you put in place needs to be justified by some kind of science. There needs to be supporting documentation. So our two critical control points are zero tolerance for any feces or ingesta on or inside the bird. And that is just visual. And the studies that we use there is that actually that's a federal regulation and we must do that. So we support that using the federal regulation. The second is the time and temperature. We need to get our birds down to 45 degrees or below within 16 hours in our air chill system. In a ice water bath chill system, you would need to do that in 4 hours. So it's a much shorter window. And maybe you can see why we started to think about air chilling as an option, because there's a lot more flexibility in there. There is lots of paperwork to fill out. We have to document everything that we do. We have to document that everything was ready and sanitized before we start. So we have a pre-operation check, and then we document when we start killing so that we know what the 16-hour window is for chilling. And so, for instance, we start at 8 a.m. We have till midnight the following night to midnight that night to make sure that the birds are chilled down to temperature. We need to validate that our HACCP plan is working. So we're keeping records about time and temperature. We're keeping records about our sampling for E. coli and Salmonella, and that kind of proves that our process works. You do need one person on staff who is HACCP certified. That is me currently. We're working on getting another staff member to do that. So, and then you have like a 90-day validation period, which is like really like it's like a probationary period where you can make some mistakes and have some problems and make lots of changes. By the end of that time, your process should be stabilized and you should be working well, and things you should be putting out a very clean and food safe product at that point. So one of the big issues with working under inspection is that you work with we work with inspectors every single day. And for the most part, that's been a really great experience. We operated non-inspected for 13 years before we started on this inspected process. And that was, we felt like we did a great job during that time. But when we got into inspection, we did realize that that being under inspection did make our product safer and cleaner and higher quality. And that was really an eye-opening thing for us, because we thought we had done a good job, that we'd done all our research. And we did find out that there were a lot of things that we weren't doing as well as we thought we were. And that was a big piece of it. So what that took for us, though, was we started with Vermont meat inspection. We were state inspected to start out. In Vermont, the Vermont state inspectors and the USDA inspectors are actually the same people. They're hired by two different entities. That was a great way to segue from state inspection to USDA. And what we found was that if we took the attitude that we would always listen and learn and make an attempt to address any issues that the inspectors brought up, and we were there just to work together to improve our process, that was a great way to approach it. And we got a ton of feedback. We've learned a lot from those inspectors. They're in many, many different plants, and they know how things can get done easier and better and with a higher degree of food safety. And so we took that, taking that attitude has been the key to our success. And that doesn't mean that we haven't, had some, I won't call it conflict, that we haven't had some arguments about what is the best way to move forward. And I think for us, it's gaining that respect and building that relationship has allowed us to say, hey, wait a minute, I'm not sure you're right about this particular issue, and I want to learn more. And as a result, we've had some great outcomes from that approach. Some plant owners have an adversarial relationship with their inspection staff, and in the end, working with the USDA, that will never win out in the end. It just can't. They're too powerful of an organization. So we've always been very receptive. For the most part, they're very reasonable people. They want to see you succeed. And if you're both taking the attitude, hey, we want this to be the best for the end user, then things are going to turn out well. I'm glad you're smiling there, Laura. That is, this is one of our, believe it or not, one of our best employees. Labor has been challenging for us. We're such a seasonal operation. We start processing in May and we quit processing in November because we are a 100% pasture-raised operation. And once snow is on the ground, we're just not doing pasture-raised poultry anymore. We do a few things year-round now, but it's very, very limited. So labor has been very challenging. Actually, this year has been a bit easier because there's been a lot of people out of work and interested in trying something new, and we do pay pretty well particularly for farm work. But it is seasonal. People do have to find another job during the winter months. It does take some time to actually develop the skills to be effective in our plant. We spend a tremendous amount of time training because we are seasonal and we don't have a year-round staff. We want to have people whose personalities mesh and that feel good about working with each other. We create a really fun environment. We're playing music and everybody's singing along, and before you know it, we have 1,000 birds in our chiller and we're on the way. And that is, it's key to really have both a culture of constant improvement and effectiveness and efficiency, but also that fun environment, and you're working extremely closely with people. This year, I don't have any pictures of this because it's frankly been extremely hard to get photos of this because of the amount of water flowing around in our plant, but it's been very, very challenging from a personal protection equipment. Right now, we have people who are literally standing shoulder to shoulder with plexiglass barriers between them, and they're wearing a mask and they're wearing a face shield along with along with the waterproof aprons and other things that we would normally be wearing. So that part has been very, very difficult for us this year. It's been less. It's been much more challenging to make it as fun an environment as it has been in the past, but we're dealing with it. There is an injury risk. I myself have had a double carpal tunnel surgery on both wrists. So we have to watch that. We're doing everything we can to mitigate that. We stretch every day before we head in, and we stretch at lunchtime. And we have an ergonomics specialist come in and train our staff every season to make sure that they're thinking about how to use their bodies in a way that will not lead to injury. It doesn't always work out that way, but it's something that's important to think about as you move into doing more and more birds, if that's your goal. One of the big ways that we found that we could help pay for this is that we process for other farms. And we only do meat-free chickens and turkeys. We don't do people's spent layer hens or ducks or other, guinea fowl or anything like that. We have a minimum of 30 chickens for any customer, or 10 turkeys. So we want people to actually be doing, we don't take in 1 or 2 chickens that they want to raise for their own kitchen. It's really got to be at least a strong hobby. We do have large farms that are benefiting and getting a wider access to markets that come to us and do up to 3,000 birds a year through us, and that's growing as well. They have to be with crates. We ask them to withhold feed the day before, so we don't have a lot of manure in the birds, and they have to pick up the same day, so that we're not holding them in our. So back in 2014, we were $5.50 a chicken and $18 a turkey. Right now, we're $6 per chicken and $18 a turkey. And we do offer parting for. We do offer parting for some customers, and we charge an additional $3.50 a bird for parting. And right now, I would say that our processing plant has become the primary economic driver of our farm. It's how we add value. It's how we differentiate ourselves from other farms who are doing pasture poultry. We only have done whole birds in the past for outside customers, but we're starting to part now, and that's something that they really appreciate. We've had some issues with people who are not pulling feed, with bird cleanliness. We've had some folks that show up late, which can be a major problem. And they can show up with really soiled crates, and that's not acceptable from a USDA perspective. So those are some of the problems that we run into. There's also potential problem with bringing in disease onto our farms, and that's something that we're constantly thinking about. That's why we want to have clean crates, and that's why we do a really big cleanup after every outside producer comes in. And they're almost always harder than our own birds. They're less consistent, and it takes us a little bit longer, but the economics of it are such that we really benefit by doing outside producer birds. Now, the other piece of that is that we are helping our local agriculture community move forward. And this year, for instance, we'll be doing 10,000 birds for other farms. And I know that that's a significant part of some of their businesses. So It's a big service that people want and need. Okay, switching to USDA, we did work out the kinks under state inspection. We really wanted to increase market access. We're currently selling half of all of our birds out of state. And so it's pretty obvious why we wanted the USDA seal on our birds. It can take some time to get approved. The online label approval is really onerous. It goes through the labyrinth of Washington, D.C. Federal government problems. So it's very hard to get that done. We are a part-time seasonal plant. We don't have a dedicated USDA inspector, so that we're getting new inspectors and different inspectors all the time. So things do change up, and we do have to learn and develop new relationships every year. Otherwise, the process has been the same for state inspection versus USDA inspection, and the benefits of being under USDA have been spectacular for us. So the year after we rolled in our plant in a box, that gray barn that we were thinking about putting our plant into burned to the ground. So that was in 2014. We did a major rebuild. You can see the new barn structure here, which is actually, we call it the barn, but it's actually a processing and distribution center for all our products. And we designed it with lots of different storage opportunities. We have 5 different climate zones in there, and we can keep frozen product, refrigerated product, roots and winter squash. All of that can be stored and then cleaned and processed and distributed from there. It also allowed us to add new processing space into our project. One of the biggest things about this when we decided to rebuild was that we went from a situation where we had very little debt to a situation where we all of a sudden had significant debt, and that spurred a 250% expansion over 4 years, essentially from gross sales of $250,000 to $1 million in 4 years. And that came with a lot of challenges as well. It's probably a discussion for a different time, but we are we're dealing with that as we speak, but it's gotten a lot better. We've been able to add value, and I think that's the future for our kind of program, and that's what a processing plant that's inspected allows you to do. Right now, we grind chicken, we make chicken sausage, and we've really found a lot of success in the marketplace with that, and a lot of market differentiation in our area and throughout New England with new products. So it's been something that's been a major boon for our business, and it's allowed us to hire a lot of folks, so create a lot of jobs and make a better living for our family. So here's our starting basic economics. This is what it looked like when we were operating without inspection, so non-inspected. And this is per bird. Back then we were doing, it cost us about $2.50 per bird, doing about 300 birds with 4 people. Ice per bird was about 50 cents. Bags and labels were about 30 cents. Miscellaneous cleaning supplies, 50 cents, and total operating cost was about $3.80 per bird to process it, right? If we charge $5.50 a bird, that would leave us just $1.70 per bird for depreciation, overhead, and profit. So when we put in the new barn, we also added in air chilling. And I don't know if folks are familiar with this, but if you are considering doing any kind of expansion or putting in an inspected poultry, on-farm poultry processing, air chilling is something you should really consider. One of the big things with that is that, so first of all, most birds in the United States are chilled using ice water baths. So there are a couple of things that go along with that. First of all, birds that are chilled in ice water baths retain up to 8% of their body weight in water. While that water is probably clean, it's certainly not just clean, pure water. It's probably got a little blood in it. It may have some sterile fecal matter in there. It may have a number of other things. But one of the big things, if you have, for instance, a chill tank that has 100 birds in it, if there's one bird that goes into that tank that has any fecal matter on it, then the entire tank is contaminated and is adulterated with something that is not food safe. So with air chilling, we're chilling in crates that are stacked with they're perforated crates, so the air moves through them. We did build a specialized air chiller, the blast chiller that we use to cool down birds within the 16-hour allotted period. It takes us really only about 10 hours to do that, so we have a little cushion in case there's a problem. Right now we're doing, our labor has come down per bird. We're 10 people doing 1,000 birds in about 9 hours. This is at a $16 an hour labor cost. The chilling cost is about 25 cents, and if you remember back with ice water, it was about 50 cents per bird. So the chilling cost is about 25 cents per bird. Bags and labels are in the same area. We do a good bit more cleaning, so that's a little bit more expensive. But right now, we're at $3.18 a bird, and we charge outside producers and ourselves, our own poultry operation, $6 a bird, which leaves us $2.82, which heading back is a significant increase over the ice water side of things. So this investment created operational savings of over $12,000 over 2015 numbers. So we did put in air chilling in 2016, and it saved us $12,000 over 2015 numbers. Big savings, and it was quite a significantly positive payback. We were able to pay that back over 5 years, the investment in that air chilling process. I want to touch on this because this is something that that you're allowed to do under USDA inspection. There are some states in New England, I believe Maine is one of them, where you can have an inspected facility but not operate under inspection, and there you can do parting. I'm just making a case for parting your birds. There's just a huge economic benefit in doing this. Just taking a quick look at what you gain by doing this. And these numbers, I'll just say that these numbers are an average of our wholesale and retail prices. So right now we actually get $5.85 a pound retail, we get $4.25 a pound wholesale. So I did an average between these two. We average about $20 a bird, and our chicken size average is right around 4 pounds. That's our sweet spot, right at 4 pounds. If you do the same bird, so we get about $20 for a whole bird out there in the marketplace. if we take the same bird and we part it, our standard part is boneless breast and tenders, skinless boneless breast and tenders. We split the thigh and the drum, so we split the leg quarter into thighs and drums. Wings, of course, and then the frame, that would be the back, what's left of the chicken after you take wings and drums and thighs and breasts and tenders off. The total we get, and this is again an average price between wholesale and retail, we get, our total is $34 per bird, which is essentially a $14 increase, a little less than $14. And additional bags and labels are about 25 cents, additional cleaning supplies. So this is the big number right here. Right now, we're actually able to do better than one person parting and packaging a bird in about 5 minutes, or about 12 birds an hour. And we are averaging our labor cost per hour in our poultry processing unit is about $16 an hour. So one person can add $168 of value per hour if we part our birds. And right now, out of 1,000 chickens per slaughter, we're probably parting 900 of those because of the economic benefit. You can see that the return on labor investment is 1,000%. So that's the big question. Is it worth parting? Absolutely. Can you part in Vermont anyway? Can you part in Vermont when you're not under inspection? Absolutely not. You have to sell the whole bird. You can't even sell the feet or anything else off that bird. You have to sell the whole bird whole. And that's the reality in Vermont. I don't know what the regulations are in all of the different New England states. I know that some of them allow you to do up to 20,000 birds in an inspectable facility, but not under inspection. And then some of those can part their birds out. At least in Vermont and in many other states, you wouldn't be able to sell those items wholesale to a restaurant or to a grocery store, for instance. So that's something that was a major barrier for us in Vermont, and maybe a barrier for you somewhere, wherever you are from in New England. But nonetheless, even if you were operating under a much larger exemption, a 20,000 bird exemption, which I know they have in Maine, you would not be able to sell that across state lines. So in Maine, which is also a very small market in general, you would be illegal to cross state lines, for instance, and sell into Boston. So that's just a big piece of that. Now, because we are an organic certified processor, and really the only one I know of in New England that accepts outside birds, we actually get producers out of Rhode Island and New Hampshire that come to us to be able to do their certified organic birds, and we're going to continue to do that. It's a major problem. If anyone wanted to do it, Laura, if you're ready to do it closer to Rhode Island, I bet you would have a customer or two that would come visit you for that. Anyway, I can't emphasize enough how much parting is really worth doing, and why it's worth doing. So I'm more or less at the end of the kind of prepared information I have. I have a lot of knowledge and happy to answer tons of questions about this, how you get started. Even if you want to do it in your barn or outdoors, I'm happy to answer any specific questions or things. And I'm also happy to talk to you about how we have scaled up our. I do have lots of slides about how we've scaled up our pasture poultry operation to meet the demand that we found once we started to go into inspection. So I'll open it up to questions now. And I blasted right through all of those issues, and I know I'm sure there's lots of things that I haven't covered that maybe you're interested in. So.
Hi, Bruce. This is Laura. Can tell you're a real numbers man. That's awesome. Just a couple questions. Since you put your brand new barn up, you're still using the container for your processing?
We are. We do a lot of process. So we did create more processing space in the barn, but it's not slaughter space. And the plant in the box is actually the perfect slaughter space for our size, for our scale. And the reason that it is that it is tight. There's no question that it's tight. But what that means is you're not tempted to add in extra transport and extra steps into your process. It's really streamlined, and it works really well for that. Basically, the birds come to you. You don't go to the birds. While it is very close in there, it's super efficient for the size, for the amount of space that it is. I mean, doing essentially 1,000 birds in a day with 10 people for, in essentially a space that's less than 320 square feet is a pretty good return on your investment in that space.
What was the name of the company that produced the container for you?
It's PIB, Plant in a Box. It's actually, if you've heard of Featherman equipment, Featherman makes poultry processing equipment for small on-farm poultry operations, and it's the founder and CEO of that company that started Plant in a Box. And I would say I've joked with him that I want to trade mine in for the newer models, because they've really come a long way, I think, since the first one, which is us. And their newer models are really slick, and they do a great job. There's no way you could build a bricks and mortar standalone for the money that they're charging.
For sure.
I don't know if anybody, there are some people who are building mobile units in trailers that move from farm to farm, and that might be something to look into. But there's no one I know of that's actually building in shipping containers currently that is an inspectable facility.
Well, certainly the state of Mass is always talking about how few places there are to process birds. I imagine you've got quite a lot of Massachusetts farmers bringing their poultry to you.
We have some. We do try to talk people out of it,
Yeah.
driving that far with our birds, but yes.
How far are you?
And we fill up.
How far are you from the line, the Massachusetts border?
We're probably, I mean, if you got right on, let's say, I-89, we're probably 2.5 hours from the northern border of Massachusetts. I-89 or I-91. We're basically, we're like 2.5 hours from Brattleboro, Vermont, which is right on the southern border.
Well, great work. That was a great presentation. Really Looks like you went through a lot of, you're a process person, so it sounds like it was small steps, but large leaps along the way.
Absolutely. One of the things I'll just give a plug for my next conference workshop, which is that I'm doing a workshop on lean farming and processes in lean, which includes our poultry processing, but also all the other aspects of our farm. And that's tomorrow at 4 o'clock, I believe. And there's a lot more about, you hit the nail on the head. I am a process person. I think about it all the time, and it's really paid off on our farm. So there's a lot more about how we develop our processes and how we train our staff in that presentation. If you don't have other questions, we have a little bit of time left. I'm also willing to share kind of some of our field processes and how we've scaled up for pasture poultry. Or I'm also happy to answer any question about processing, on-farm processing that you have from, where we started, which was 25 birds in a day with 2 people, right up to our 1,000 bird a day, parting 900 a day kind of process as well. We've done it. We've done all of that. And unfortunately,
let's Bruce, real quick. We'll see if anyone else wants to unmute themselves and ask a question. And if not, then by all means, let's be happy to see your how you get the birds out on pasture.
Great. Yeah, and I'm happy to spend the time talking about that. I think with less, I've always felt like having a good 20 minutes to half hour for questions has been a good thing, but with only a few people, I guess that we run out of questions quickly. All right, without further ado, so pasture poultry, we run a couple thousand layers out on pasture. All of our birds are moved daily onto new pasture, and we operate, as I said, 2,000 broilers. This year we'll do 2,000 layer hens. This year we'll do 30,000 broilers, and we'll do about 1,200 turkeys on pasture. We start in the brooder, of course. We use these very cheaply made Ohio brooders. And you can see there that we have automated water, cell waters. One of the things that really hurts farmers' labor numbers is when they don't automate their water. They can just cost a lot of time and make for a lot of headaches. But we spend the first 3 weeks in a brooder. They need to have access to 90 degrees, but they don't necessarily have to be in 90 degrees the entire time, and plenty of space to move around. This is where we started on the left in these 10 by 12, 75 bird chicken tractor production model. Back then we were able to move one of these shelters and with 2 people and feed it out, make sure all the water was good in about 5 minutes. We've moved from there to field shelter production, and we call these MRCs. They're mobile range coops. They're 21 by 36. They hold 500 birds each, and we can move 500 birds with 2 people in 10 minutes. An incredible labor savings. Really, the first year that we did this, that we instituted this, we had come from moving 40 of these shelters a day, every morning, to buying and implementing 8 of these shelters to increase our numbers. And it's been a huge revolutionary change in our farm business. So just going quickly to that, just looking at our poultry expansion and the cost-benefit analysis here. At one point, so we would have had to do the same number of birds. We would have had to do 50 chicken tractors. We have to have a dolly, and a portion of the truck because we need truck to get the feed out there. So a portion of the truck depreciation. The water systems are about the same, and feeders. The cost of that is about $14,000, and that sounds like a reasonable amount of money. Cost of 8 mobile field shelters at the time that we did it. Portion of the truck depreciation. We bought 2 gravity wagons for feed so that we could go out and move the shelters and have feed right at hand. And the feeders and waterers for 500 birds per shelter was about $60,000. So time to move feed, water, all of that was about 3.5 hours. And that ended up being mostly because of the feed moving, ended up being 3 people at $14 an hour. We pay our field staff less because it's kind of a less skilled operation. We had about $1.12 before feed costs into the birds, just in labor. So labor for 4,000 birds on the other side was we ended up going from $1.12 in labor per bird to about 28 cents in labor per bird before feed costs. Whoops, sorry about that. So labor costs for the season at 18 weeks at full capacity was $18,000. And then after we invested in the mobile field shelters, it was more like $5,000. So some of these, so the benefits on the poultry, on the chicken tractor side was that it could be done by one person if needed. You can isolate smaller batches, and it works in smaller fields where you have trees and rocks and things in the way. And a very cheap initial investment. The benefits to the mobile range coops are that most of the work is done by the truck. The feed out is done by the truck with a gravity wagon towed behind it. So you hook on with a gravity wagon towed behind the truck, pull the shelter forward one length of the shelter with somebody inside, making sure the birds move forward as well. And then the feed is right there. You have all the feed you need right there at the gravity wagon, and the feed out is extremely quick. Our group sizes for the poultry processing unit fits really well. So two of our mobile range coops equals 1 day of processing for us. So it fits in that sense. And the truth is, we had a lot more time for other projects on the farm. So huge amount of labor here, much less labor here, and our payback on that initial investment was 4.5 years. One of the negatives about chicken tractor moving, and especially moving 50 of them at a time, was that we had workplace injuries. We had people who are moving those every day, and they started to develop shoulder problems and other things, back problems. We found, at least with the design that we were using, that we needed a larger frame person. It couldn't be done by a 100-pound woman, for instance, whereas in the mobile range coop, we can have any size. My daughter, my 14-year-old daughter has done it with me with no problems. And it was very inefficient to feed out each one of these little houses, extremely inefficient. One of the negatives to the mobile range coop is that you do need larger fields. They need to be generally flat, and you can't have a whole bunch of big rocks in the way. It just gets in the way. So if you can imagine you know, if you can imagine, let's see, I think I have, yeah. So these are basically big high tunnels on skids. And, you know, it's a really delightful environment. Because it's a high tunnel, you can raise the sides. You can adjust the sides depending on the weather. We've had snowstorms in May, and the birds, it's been 10 degrees warmer inside than outside. And the snow doesn't penetrate because you can roll these sides down. It's just a much better place for those birds in inclement weather. And then when it's hot out, you can roll the sides right up. And you can see that right along here, we have automated water systems here. And the feeders hang right from the frame. And then you have a ton of grass. So it really does help in a big way. So just kind of back to this, you know, the cost benefit analysis. It really fit with our. It's hard for me to think of our poultry processing space without also thinking about the pasture poultry expansion that we did that went hand in hand with having a USDA, you know, putting a USDA inspected poultry plant on the farm. They really went hand in hand, and one certainly did not work without the other. So it was a big part of what we did. I also feel like, you know, in the chicken tractors, I felt it was easier to run over a bird with a chicken tractor, and that didn't always turn out well, especially if it was one person moving shelters. With a mobile range coop, we have two different operators. One is a wrangler that moves the birds forward and guarantees that they don't get run over by anything, and the other person is the driver, and they're in visual contact with each other. And we have a very specific process about that. But it's been better for our staff physically. It's been a better system for our birds. They've really, I think that that it's a much better environment for them, more space to move around, and more access to more pasture. And you know, the ultimate benefit to all this by doing pasture poultry at this scale is that we have added up to 2% soil organic matter to all the fields that we've done this on. We're talking about right around 90 acres of land. We've added 2% soil organic matter, which has been a huge benefit. We've seen some of those fields, which started out with maybe 1.5 tons of forage per year yield, to an increase up to 4 tons per year yield. And that's directly through the benefit of pasture poultry. Lots of benefits there. So I don't know if anyone has any questions about that. We have about a little more than 10 minutes left. Are there any questions? If not, I have one more thing that I'd like to show you if you want to spend some time with me. I've got one slide that I think would be interesting for you, and I'll find it right here in just a moment. Oh. As you can see, I have lots of different PowerPoints that I work through. It'll just take me a moment to do this. Yeah. So I'm going to climb up here and just watch. This is a mobile range coop move. Set up. That's the wrangler right there. And his partner is moving the truck forward. Those birds out the back are birds that aren't walking as fast as the house is moving, so they just remove them. So they're going and just adjusting the height of the feeders and the waters. And that's the end right there. So that's literally 10 minutes, 2 people, 500 birds move forward on the new pasture. And really low stress, extremely low stress way to grow lots of pasture poultry.
Great. I would just encourage any of our other participants that are muted, by all means, take this opportunity to ask your question to Bruce while you have him here. So, but Bruce, I just want to say thanks so much for presenting this great information. And, I think if you talk to any farmers about, limitations, as you've mentioned briefly, processing of any livestock variety is a bottleneck and a limiting factor for folks. So, it's great to see you taking action and helping your local community and getting over the access, probably especially where you are, located in Vermont. It's I'm sure a big service for the community. So thanks for sharing this information. And I think this is a good one. I'm glad that this workshop's being recorded, because I think a lot of people will be using this resource after the fact.
Fantastic. I'm happy to do it. And I do want to share with folks let's see if I have somewhere, I have just my, let's see, I just want to share my email, because I'm happy to answer any questions about all of this. And there you go. And I'll bring that up to full screen here. Again, I'm on the board of the American Pasture Poultry Producers Association. Great organization if you're into pasture poultry. And one of our missions is to spread the love of pasture poultry out there. And I'm happy to help anybody who's looking to get into it or has questions about it or has problems. That's kind of why we exist. So and any processing questions related to poultry in particular.
Hi, my name is Jessica, and I missed the beginning of your presentation, but I'm definitely going to email you, and thank you for your presentation.
You bet, Jessica. Happy to answer your email, whatever questions you have, no problem.
Yes, I have like my 2-year-old son here, so I just missed some of it, but I'm definitely interested. Thank you.
Fantastic.
Jessica, this presentation again is recorded, and so
yes,
you'll have access to the recordings next week.
Yes, I made sure I paid for that. I'm really excited for that. Thank you.
Great.
Great.
Well, if there's nothing more, I'm hoping to maybe see you folks, maybe some of you folks for my next presentation tomorrow at 4 o'clock.